competing in a world defined in terms of economic competitiveness has meant adapting to a world in which price matters all the time. Consider an example. The journalist Gary Legg explores some of these adaptations in an article that I think is appropriately titled, quote, "Measuring the Cost of Quality, German Engineering at the Crossroads," end quote. Legg begins his article by characterizing once again, in what is hopefully now familiar ways, the German experience of quality. And I'll quote him because it nicely evokes the sense. Quote, "On the Autobahn," which is the German highway that has no speed limits, it's often argued, by the way, that the Germans consider speed, that is high speed, to be a natural right, not to be interfered with. Traveling from Munich to Regensburg at 170 kilometers an hour, you get a feeling for what German quality is all about. Even at that high speed, the BMW rumbles softly like a large, lithe cat. When a sudden stop is necessary to avoid two cars that have been involved in an accident, braking is fast, smooth, and precise. Later, talking with engineers at Siemens, the international electronics giant whose headquarters are in Munich, the German attitude toward quality becomes apparent. It's more than respect, it is almost a reverence. And yet, Legg here continues, as markets become more global and competitive, that attitude is changing. Increasingly, in order to remain competitive, German engineers speak of shortening product development. Again and again, though it seems to go against their nature, they mention, quote, stopping the design when it's, quote, good enough, and of reducing component costs. More and more, this is still Legg, they're concerned with lowering overall costs. Their challenge, of course, is to reduce cost while still keeping quality at an acceptable level. And for a German, Legg concludes, acceptable level means high. So, you might be able to infer here how the Germans might tend to look at the United States, perhaps with a sense of envy, perhaps with a sense of distaste, perhaps a combination of the two. Legg quotes an engineer who characterizes engineering in the United States by saying, quote, "They stop the design before we would say it is finished. There are some U.S. products on the market that we would not normally accept." End quote, a traditional German perspective here. And then another engineer says, quote, "In the U.S., engineers are able to get acceptable quality in a very fast time and at a low cost. And then they start something new. In Germany, we work longer and try to get better quality, but at the same time, we increase the cost." End quote. So Legg points out that the Germans have institutionalized the workplace to enhance quality. Something in the United States, by the way, had to be back-fitted in through total quality management and quality control. Long-term employment is one such example. Legg writes, quote, "Often improvements occur simply as a result of continued long-term involvement of individuals. Because German engineers change jobs less often than their American counterparts, they frequently have more opportunities to apply their understanding and insight to improvements. On the average, German engineers work for only 3 employers during an entire career." End quote. In addition, he describes how engineers don't confine themselves to well-defined job or disciplinary boundaries. Quoting again, "Another factor that encourages quality work, according to one German engineer, is that employees at German companies expand their responsibilities across defined job boundaries. Because boundaries between engineering jobs in Germany tend to be blurred," he says, "an individual engineer is apt to tackle any problem that becomes apparent, even if it's nominally someone else's problem." This engineer, and then according to Legg, told a story of an American aerospace company where he worked for a while and where he found the opposite. This German engineer said, quote, "Everyone looks for a well-defined position and defines his boundaries. When a problem falls between boundaries, no one takes care of it unless it becomes very visible. So, note here how the German engineer is calling attention to the American approach to problem solving that I outlined in the introduction, where the first thing you do is to draw a sharp boundary around the problem. The Germans, by contrast, move across boundaries more comfortably, in part because they expect to work in a given company for long portions of their career, unlike the Americans who have come to believe that the only way to move up is to move out. Accordingly, the German engineers still consider themselves to be hire workers or hire labor. Most are still unionized. According to Legg, the German engineers will point to the union as having achieved for them a large number of important benefits. For example, although German engineers will stay with their companies for long periods of time, arguably they don't get burned out, for they work an average of 37.5 hours per week, and they have a mandatory, hear this, mandatory 6 weeks of vacation per year.